Kim, if you could take one thing from how clients in this region approach design ambition and apply it elsewhere, what would that be?
I think, I think the Middle East is fantastic at thinking big and thinking about how they can do things rather than, and also sort of, it's not a why not situation. It's why, how can we and why should we? And I think that's a big difference. Again, what we're saying is there's lots of limitations perhaps in some of the European US cities and all of that fun stuff, but they're not afraid to make decisions quickly. They're not afraid to again, just think that extra layer above what they're trying to achieve. And big doesn't necessarily mean in terms of the scale of the project. It's about delivery methods and construction methods, how we can build stuff differently in the middle of a just outside of the main city, or how can an airport react differently? We have obviously big climate changes, differences here. Sorry, I should say not big climate differences in terms of temperatures we have to deal with. So I think over here that they're not afraid to think big and they're not afraid to think ambitious.
And then on the flip side, is there anything you think this region could borrow from elsewhere?
Again, as the world becomes a smaller place, I think they need to just remember to stay authentic. I think there's lots of great lessons to be learned from every country, every region, from construction techniques in Africa to infrastructure projects in Japan. What I love about the sort of the company I'm working for right now, there's a real global feel to that, and that's really about thinking from a global scale, but bringing it into a local context. And the world should not be a vanilla place. Every country has its own culture, its own way of doing things, and I think one of the big concerns, or a concern that some people have, is everything's just to become vanilla. All buildings are the same, all roads are the same, all cars are the same, and we've got to maintain that authenticity over here.
Is it an advantage from your business and being a global business, and under your umbrella, you have multiple different businesses?
Yeah.
Would you mix them on a project, or do you tend to kind of essentially being a manager, putting the best team together for the project in hand? Is that something you do, or do you kind of keep it linear with the businesses?
No, and that's the whole point of the business. As the 10N Collective right now, we're a group of 6 companies that are under the one umbrella, one container, and that is the entire reason. We have, each company has its own set of specialisms, its own set of expertise. Yep. It's also got its own sort of set of leadership and culture. And really, the vision was to sort of bring those companies together so we could create a city as a group of companies. So the advantage is, compared to perhaps some of the singular entities, we can pull the expertise from those groups. The scale of projects here could be a large master plan, with a stadium and an airport and a living community. Bringing that specific expertise in from a WWP or an FIA or the U+A Omranier here, it gives you that local context. But what's happening over there, is that the right thing we're doing and adapting to the Middle East?
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, the whole setup gears itself towards being very entrepreneurial. We all push each other. Obviously, we have our global governance, as all of us as the CEOs of the various companies talk often, debate often, and that's great.
Agree often?
Yeah, we agree. Often when we don't agree, it's even better because the conversation really inspires. Because, there's a lot of agreement because it goes towards that common vision of what we're trying to do. We're a very sustainable, focused company. I think quite a visionary company. We're trying to do things a little bit different. It's a pretty unique setup under the whole sort of Aegis umbrella, and having this 10N Collective group. I think, it pushes each of us to kind of make sure we're doing the best of what we can, not just for, obviously, our individual respective companies or regionals or regions, but for what our clients are trying to do. And challenges are different from, the challenges here to the US, to the UK are different. And we have expertise in each of those locations. So let's lean on that. And clients here are trying to move into those other markets. So how can we sort of help them go to a US market from, say, here, or what's the right investment? Is there a particular asset? So, yeah.
I think it's getting people to get on board with it as well that are not in country.
Yeah.
And try and understand the deliverables that we're working to.
Yeah.
When we were group, it was probably you've worked for global businesses ever since I've known you. So, and obviously a lot of commitment and people buying into what we're doing comes from outside the country.
Yes.
So you do have to make sure they are positioned correctly with the right information so they understand what's trying to be achieved here and why we're taking decisions that we're doing, because it's not necessarily as straightforward.
It's true.
So, and culturally it's different. Everything's different in terms of how it is. So I think you probably find it maybe more than us now is that bringing a lot of people on the journey needs to happen so that all the buy-in with your bid, no bids and your go, no goes. It's super important that more information is put into them.
Yes.
Purely for the outside, not the inside, because we kind of get it a bit more in this bubble.
No, absolutely. I think that's we have two of the respective firms that are based in the Middle East, right? One in Riyadh and Omnia and U+A here. Yeah. And that for that exact reason is, a large amount of projects are Middle East driven. And they are different. I mean, they come with their own set of challenges that people may not be used to. But we had that local context so that we can make sure everything is aligned with what the vision of that particular project and country or government, whatever it is we're working in. It's very important, and it will be a failure if it doesn't happen that way. Yeah. Program's sometimes challenging. It's not always.
Yeah, agreed.
It's not always plain sailing.
Yeah. And then with that collective of 6 specialist practices, what is the real benefit for the client? Is it flexibility, sharper expertise, more tailored teams? How does it differentiate to a large consolidated firm?
Look, I think it's kind of all of those. I think you have the various expertise, and those companies are really born out of that expertise. You take Fear out of Madrid. Stadiums has been their major piece, so they know stadiums inside and out. Yes, they do other pieces of projects too, but it's a little bit different because bringing that expertise together on a global scale helps us. It helps us to scale up and scale down quickly. It helps us to look at projects differently. Often we're engaged very early on in the master planning project, and there's sort of a vision for what the master plan might be, and we can come in as a group and sort of start looking at that, saying, well, you're sure that's the right sort of asset, going back to the values of assets the developers are looking for, and sort of challenge that or question it. And I think that's really, we're a very curious group, and it's a great sort of eclectic mix of people, very diverse, which I really enjoy having those different conversations and understanding. And we live in a very diverse place as well. And like you were saying, Rob, is bringing those different viewpoints in to this part of the world and helping them understand that, and vice versa. It's not just about importing; it's about exporting that expertise too. I mean, let's not remember a lot of the project here in the Middle East would never happen elsewhere, or couldn't happen elsewhere, or maybe will happen elsewhere with the knowledge that we've gone through in this part of the world.
And then Rob, from a delivery side, what would you see as the benefit of that model that 10 Collective have?
I think it probably goes back to what Tim was talking about earlier in terms of like the early engagement side of it. I think all contractors would like to get engaged earlier on projects because they can understand it more. Things can be more verified, priced correctly. The deliverables can be discussed. Execution, you can talk about problem solving, etc., etc. I think when we receive information, obviously the more detailed it is, the better, because when we're able to deliver better information. So the reality is, if the company's got multiple sides of discipline, then it tends to come more like collectively together, as opposed to, we're doing some jobs at the moment, and there's a vast amount of consultants on there, and that's just the way it is. It's not a problem. But I think if the more that's maybe collectively together in-house should, in theory, be more streamlined and collaborative in terms of receiving that information. People understand how people work. And I think that goes with us working with our clients. They work with us and we work with them for multiple reasons. We know how they work. And when people have been in the country for, I suppose, as long as we have, you tend to overlap and come full circle and start working with people again. And there's a reason why we do that, because it tends to be it tends to be better, doesn't it? So
It is, but I think the main word you use there is the collaboration, right? And I think that's really about what the collective is also about. It's that, collaborative approach. The future design is about collaboration. It's about how we work together from a 10N point of view, how we work with all the other parts of that project team, but it really sort of also how we look at, again, particularly in the Middle East, our relationship with the environment, how that's going to sort of create these sustainable cities or spaces and places, and really thinking about, the next generation, not just this generation. And that's, again, I think a big shift that's happening is it's not just about the now, it's about what's going to happen, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago.
it's a bit of a shift on conversation. This is, but it's a bit like with frameworks and with clients. With repeat business that we have with clients, if they're able to talk about 26, 27, 28 pipelines, visions, what they're looking at doing, and when you have been a delivery partner, whether it's your side or our side, teams can be formed, relationships can be formed, and delivery can be stronger. I think if we were able to have more vision of what's going on in the future, we can tailor more teams and more specialities for said client or said project. And if they're prepared to, you're successful on one project, it's gone really well, but you're aware that other work is coming with that client and that team was successful, the delivery was good, you're prepared to kind of like mold teams to move on.
Absolutely.
I really wish we had more vision of what is going to happen with the different clients. I understand why they don't release the information, but it would be beneficial, in my opinion, for the project and the longevity of things if we were able to have that kind of insight of a future work.
But I think I agree with you, but I think we can. I think that's the relationship piece. I mean, you're right. I mean, individual businesses aren't going to give away the secrets of what their global vision is.
Of course.
But also from our field, we should be part of that conversation, and perhaps we should be more proactive in actually making that conversation happen. If someone's looking at a new headquarters building, you're right. We always look at 5, 10 years ahead, but also obviously we don't know how technology is going to change and all of that sort of good stuff. But we should be driving the conversations to help them understand that actually, yes, if you look at 5, 10 years, it equals X. But if you look at 50 to 100 years, it equals Y.
Yeah.
And your upfront cost might be a bit more, or your program might be a bit longer, all of those words that people don't like to hear. But these are the benefits. And I think that's a really good conversation we should be talking about, is how can we start shaping that future of the
And I actually believe the contractors should be a part of it because of, essentially you will always be in before us 9 times out of 10. Yeah. If we're along the way, there's a lot of groups that, you see on LinkedIn at the moment, there's a lot of groups and, meetings were going on with people to talk about, now, and the future of what the construction is going to be. And I think it's really important to have, ops people, builders, commercial people to understand with the clients, with the architects. So, because it all does come collectively together, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to break down the borders of separation of companies and disciplines, right? And and we do that. We have the forums and we talk about it, but no one sort of follows up on it, I think, enough. And
it's not buildability, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And look, no one has a crystal ball to read the future. That would be great. But if we have a think tank or a system where you can kind of challenge that, that's a really good piece we should look at.
You're both mentioning, the future, the vision of the region, but what do clients in this region actually want from luxury design right now, and how has that shifted in recent years, and what have they stopped wanting also?
Yeah, I mean, from a design point of view, I think hospitality has changed a lot. I mean, COVID, of course, had an influence, but I don't think that was necessarily the only driver. I think it's fundamentally changed in what people are looking for and what people expect luxury to be. I think it used to be, the glitz, the boldness, the marble everywhere. It's, the more expensive, the better, and that's what it used to be. But now it's really changing to that. Again, in my view, a human dynamic. People want to look at the wellness aspect of what's happening. They want to look at the privacy side. It used to be you want to be seen, and of course there's Instagram and everything else, but you used to want to be seen at this place. But now people want to go on a retreat or away where it's they feel they can just disappear for a bit. Or I think in terms of the design too, it's the local craftsmanships, and people don't want a vanilla hotel now that's they can get the same hotel here in New York, in London. That works for certain things, and those will always exist because familiarity is also great for people as they travel the globe. But I think it's really come back down to individual needs of change from the users, from the clients, and it's really goes back to the soul of people's well-being, people's personal experiences. The family retreats are different to the couples retreats, the singles, and it's, you know, people now sort of start looking at hotels from, you know, natural air quality to what natural light, and people are spending more time working at hotels or sometimes living in hotels, and that's a huge shift in terms of how the operators have to think, how the design and size of rooms have to change, the layouts, the offerings in terms of F&B and beverages and everything else. So I think that's, you know, that really has changed a lot in the last few years.
It's difficult. It's really difficult, isn't it, to understand what a hotel should be now, based on the fact that the demographic of people that are going there, and the want and the way the world's changing. We were actually laughing the other day about this, about Lenny Emery and Premier Inn. They've done they've done an amazing job. Because basically they sold that hotel based on a bed. That's the sell on the hotel. Nothing to do with breakfast, nothing to do with check-in, nothing to do with anything apart from it's either the bed or the pillow. It's one of them, isn't it? And the whole advert is him just getting into bed and going, this bed's X, Y, and Z, and it's just unbelievable what they've done on it. I know it's completely different to what you're designing, Tim, but you get my point, right? They've understood their market, and I think the good and bad thing about Dubai is that the market, the demographic's so big, it's such a multicultural. It's in the centre of the world. You're getting everybody from around the world coming here that wants something different, that appeals to them something different, and it's difficult.
There's never going to be that one size fits all again. It's never going to happen. But I think it's gone away from sort of showing people what you actually have, if you like, and what that Ritz is, and it's changing to showing people what space is and how they can live and how they can actually feel. And I think that's a really important part, is how they actually feel in the spaces now and how you feel in that hotel, rather than the show and tell like it used to be.
Yeah, it's just less about the opulence and more about the experience, the privacy, the quality.
Yeah.
But then equally, what do you see falling away or becoming less important in the future?
Look, there's always going to be various levels of hotels, and that's important, because when people travel, they have different ambitions. Like, I might want to always go and stay at a 4-star, and you maybe always a 5-star and always a 3-star. But I think what the difference we're going to see is much more merging, and hotels almost. There's going to be a few types. I think there's going to be those that are very separated, that are pure hotel, a pure retreat. That's very different. I think there's going to be a lot more boutique style hotels. I mean, you look around Europe now. You look around. You know, the Airbnb is still there, but those are kind of growing up now to these 10, 15, 20 person hotels. And then the larger scale hotels, the IHGs, the Marriotts and the Bonvoys are still always going to be there. But I think they're adapting again their experience to how they can differentiate themselves from the other brands. And I think, again, it will still focus on that mental well-being. It will focus on health, and it will focus on that community sustainable piece as well. So I think it's going to be a really interesting time. I don't think we're going to see necessarily a dramatic shift in the next 2 to 3 years, but to the point earlier, they're all now looking at how we can feel in 10 years' time.
And you mentioned sustainability. Where does that sit in the luxury brief, and who's actually driving those conversations? Is it the client or the design team?
Huge word, right?
Yeah, I'd say a huge
With
word.
a big scope.
With a big scope. And that's the important caveat, right? I mean, sustainability covers so many different things, but like I think it used to be that it was a word that was used that often as a design team or as a contractor, you come in and say, hey, we should think about sustainability. Whereas now it's upfront and center. There's a lot of investment that's based on, the green investments that are available globally. There's a lot of impact on the environment. There's a lot of investor expectations. There's an ESG piece to it. So the conversation's really changed from let's just talk about it to actually has to be embedded from day one. And going back to the 10N, that's something we do. Part of our group, and we have our own sustainable team that covers a multitude of sustainable things. Yeah. But that's just the way that people think now, and people should think. And it's not a piece that's staying stagnant. Sustainability is always evolving. What we perceived as good back then is now not necessarily the best route. Materials are evolving, people are evolving, people's habits are changing. So yeah, it's really gone from a let's just kind of talk about it to let's really make sure it happens and implement it, which has been happening in the last few years, to now it's kind of number one or number two on the agenda.
I think the government have got some schemes, haven't they?
Yeah,
in terms of focuses that
absolutely.
they've got from a manufacturing point of view in the country.
Yeah,
I think there's more, but we're very fortunate to have some of the best joinery work in terms of craftsmanship on our doorstep.
Yeah,
I think we have a lot of options here, and the way that the government's taking it with from a manufacturing side is will obviously add to that sustainability side of it. But it's a massive word. It's something that's top of the agenda. More so with other people than other companies. But I know the biggest thing that it's changing constantly, rules, regulations, products, everything's changing with it, which I think technically it has to, because obviously it's evolving.
Same way design evolves, construction evolves.
Exactly. So, and just going back to the hotel things and what they're doing, obviously there's a lot of work going on here at the moment with hotels. So, and some of the big hotels are being done, the iconic ones.
Yep.
So I suppose in the next 18 months, it's going to be really interesting to see what actually happens with them and the designs they chose to go down and
absolutely
and how it will be, because they're iconic architecturally. And I do think though, Tim, some of these hotels haven't been refurbed in 20 years. So originally they were done pretty well, right? Incredibly well.
Absolutely.
For saying the occupancy, the use, the time, the environment that we're in. The 20 years in, and they do need doing. We get that, but
there's a lot of them.
But originally, you talk about reuse and you talk about it now. You sometimes think, are they building now to potentially reuse in 20 years? Is that build now going to be good enough to be?
Those conversations are certainly happening.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's happened 20 years ago because the buildings are still there and they're still iconic.
Yep.
But that, thinking about the reuse in 20 years before you even build it's probably a hard mindset to think about. But the reality is, you as in the company's got to be that forefront and that leader, right?
No, and we are. And we're having those conversations.
And it's hard for someone to think about that, isn't it?
It is.
It's like when you buy a car, right? You're thinking of selling it before you've even got it in the car.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of principle. You're looking at doing something and what you're going to do with it in 20 years' time.
But that goes back to the beginning of the conversation, right? That's what, you buy value. And what is that value going to be?
Absolutely.
And
but money values money, right?
Well, not always. Not always.
But I think if you're looking to purchase something or do something to have that value in a period of time, the reality is what I'd assume.
No, but I think that's a good point. Is value money or is value other things? Is that family health, human health?
Well, I suppose when I said value, I suppose I meant that to get the value, it's going to cost probably money.
But that's also a shift that we're happening.
Yes, of course.
There's a tangible cash, of course, that's always going to be there. Yeah. But going to what 20 years from now is what is actually going to be your measure of value.
Yeah, but it's definitely changing.
It's definitely changing.
Yeah,
and I think the other part that's changed is going back to the sustainability as part of what we do. Everything it's going back. Some hotels, you could tell were sustainable hotels because of the way they looked, and I think the best building isn't necessarily the one that looks the most sustainable, and it's not necessarily the biggest. It's a combination of all of those things. You shouldn't have to look at a building and go, "That's a sustainable building." No, that's a big building. It should simply be the best building.
Yeah.
Tim, Rob, I just want to thank you very much for being on today's episode. I think we just had some really insightful discussions around how the region is evolving quickly. I think just not in terms of scale, but also ambition. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it evolves over the future. So, again, thank you very much for being on today.
Thank you.
See you again next time.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thank you.